On today's episode of the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast, it's mock draft week. No Ceilings mock 3.0 is here, and Maxwell Baumbach and I are breaking down picks 1 through 6 for the Pacers, Kings, Wizards, and more. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. I'm your host, Nathan Grubel, scout, consultant, evaluator of prospects over the last 15 years, and current No Ceilings contributor. And joining me, as he always does, my co-host, creator of the No Stone Unturned series for No Ceilings, is Maxwell Baumbach. Maxwell, you ready for a podcast today about mock drafts?
I couldn't be more excited, and we're changing it up this week for Mock Draft Mania. This time, we get to go first. We get to make picks 1 through 6. This is a little bit new. It's a little bit different for us. I'm excited to throw some spicy picks out there. It's going to be a great time.
100% on today's episode, as Maxwell just said, we're making selections 1 through 6 for the No Ceilings NBA Mock Draft 3.0 on this podcast feed. We're making picks for the Indiana Pacers, Sacramento Kings, Washington Wizards, Atlanta Hawks via the Pelicans, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Utah Jazz. So some spicy picks abound. Let's not waste any time, Maxwell. Let's get right into it. So at #1 overall, the Indiana Pacers are on the clock in this mock draft exercise. As I'll alert the fans, as well as I'm sure other good hosts this week are going to allude to it as well. This was a tankathon sim, so this is complete refresh of where the standings are currently. The Indiana Pacers won the #1 overall pick in this scenario. And with that pick, I'm going first. Cam Boozer from Duke, come on down. You're going #1 overall in this mock. The 6'9", 250-pound power forward, averaging 23 points, almost 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 58.6% shooting from the field, 37.7% from three, 75% from the free throw line, 17.4 rebounding rate, 26.4 assist rate, a 3.1 steal rate, 2.4 block rate, 11.6 turnover rate on almost 30% usage, and a 19.4 BPM. Maxwell, it's as we've been talking about for so many episodes. It's as I shared with the audience last week, talking about the big three in particular and unpacking how historic of a big three that this really is at the top of this draft class. I also wanted to do a little bit of digging into what's Cam Boozer doing, not just against teams like Stanford, like we just saw this weekend, where he absolutely obliterated the Cardinals. That, for better or worse, we love Ibuka Okori, obviously, as a prospect to monitor long-term for the draft moving forward, but that is not a great collection of talent in particular on that roster. So if you try and just strip away some of those games where we know Cam Boozer has just a physical edge, looking at his numbers versus top 50 competition per Bartorvik, so 8 games versus top 50 opponents this year, a 15 BPM on another 30% usage rate mark, almost 64% true shooting, 27.3 assist rate, 63% shooting twos, 35% shooting threes. Maxwell, it doesn't matter who is in front of this guy. He is obliterating his opponents. And there is nothing, in my opinion, offensively that he really can't do on the court. There are a lot of defensive concerns that have come up, and they're warranted, especially around the basket. But when you just take a look at this player who understands how to operate in every aspect of the game, who consistently makes right decision after right decision, his mind is his superpower. And we've seen so many stars come through the NBA who have produced before they've gotten to the NBA, whether it's been in college, whether it's been overseas. They've had these ridiculously efficient seasons, but their athletic tools and traits have been in question. And yet, because they've been so gifted operating and breaking down opponents with their minds as their superpower, they've been able to translate not just good to the NBA level, but great and beyond. And what we're seeing with Boozer, Maxwell, we're seeing arguably the best domestic pre-draft campaign for a prospect borderline ever. Like I was talking to
Yeah.
you before we start this podcast. If Duke makes it, not even if they win the championship, but if they make it to the Final Four and this is the level of production that Boozer ends with, he will have an argument for the greatest college basketball season ever. And I just feel like that's sort of been left behind in the discourse because we're trying so hard to project forward and utilize our eyes and what we're seeing in the aesthetics and all of those things come into play when we're trying to break down how a prospect is going to fit at the next level. I just feel like, Maxwell, we've lost some of that in our conversations around this guy. And I don't understand it. Again, he's a tier 1 prospect. Any of the next few guys we're going to mention in this exercise, you can have them number 1, you can take the number 1. But this idea that Cam isn't on the level of some of these other players in this class, if that's even a thought or a suggestion out there, I'm just saying I personally don't understand it.
Yeah. So here's the thing I want to touch on with Cam real quick, because I'm right there with you. I have Cam number 1 as well. I feel like a lot is made with Cam of like, well, is he a positional tweener? Do I feel good about him guarding wings? Do I feel, good about him guarding legit NBA 5s and whatever? And like, I feel like we never talk about the inverse of that question. Like we never talk about the fact that like, hey, Cam Boozer is in the 92nd percentile on post-up efficiency. Do I feel good about like a 6'6" guy guarding Cam Boozer? Conversely, he's in the 89th percentile in isolation. The 84th is a pick and roll ball handler. Granted, the volume isn't huge. We've seen him cook people on an island. So do I feel good about my 5 guarding Cam Boozer on an island? We only talk about the negative side of the mismatch equation with him. And it's wild to me that like we're not talking about like how many different types of players you can engineer cross matches for Cam to feast on something.
Yep.
And it just feels like that never comes up. So I just wanted to get that out there real quick.
No, for sure. That's a great point. And yeah, it's just his overall versatility. The fact that there isn't a lineup or roster construction, in my opinion, that he can't fit into. And with this Pacers team in particular, choosing a number 1 in this exercise, we talk about how Cam's brain is his superpower. That's also the case for Tyrese Halliburton. You have both of those guys on the court driving offense, making the hit-ahead passes in transition. The ball's just skipping all over the floor. Can you imagine the shots that would be able to be created for guys like Aaron Nesmith, guys like Benedict Mathurin, Pascal Siakam? The shot quality within that Pacers offense with Rick Carlisle steering the ship as head coach, I can't even imagine how potentially lethal that offense would be, obliterating opponents off the floor. Would there be defensive concerns? Absolutely. The Pacers have had defensive questions, even making the run to the NBA Finals. They really picked it up in the playoffs, but several iterations of those Carlisle Pacers teams have had defensive questions. But them operating at such a high level offensively, they would instantly become one of my top 3 favorite NBA teams to watch, hands down. So Cam Boozer, number 1. Sacramento Kings, Maxwell, you're up with the second pick. Who are you going with?
With the Sacramento Kings at number 2, I'm taking Darryn Peterson from Kansas.
Let's go.
Darryn Peterson has been so excellent this season, and I feel like it's been a little bit overshadowed by the fact that we're also getting excellent seasons out of Cam Boozer and AJ Dybantsa. Nothing you can do about that. I think also part of it is that the Kansas fan base treats this man as if he's a Benedict Arnold style figure in the world of basketball because he's been injured a little bit. Now, here's the thing. He's been playing through injury. Despite that, as a freshman, he has a 36.5 usage rate.
It's stupid.
Which, like, when was the last time you even saw a 36.5 usage rate
stupid
from a legitimate prospect? That feels like something that should only happen on like a terrible team with one good player that plays in like the NEC, right? On that usage, he has a 64.2 true shooting percentage. He's shooting 40.6% from 3 on 15.7 attempts from 3 per 100 possessions. Those are dead eye numbers. Like that, like we're talking a Sam Hauser style 3-point shooter. And then in and of itself, if you just, and like, this is what I love about Darryn Peterson. I think the floor is excellent. Really good at timing for digs off the ball. He's got this great pro-ready frame with his long arms, 3.3 block rate, knows how to play as a low man, knows where to be off the ball. So if we're just zooming out, big picture, we've got a dude who's 6'5", 6'6", long arms, unbelievable 3-point shooter. Good, reliable defender. Even if he's not, first team all defense. He's not Amen Thompson. Don't get me wrong, but he's a good defender, right? Then we look at the potential upside area. This is a guy who has an assist rate just below 20 I think the playmaking has been like a little bit behind where I wanted it to be. If there's going to be one gripe that I have with him this season.
This is where I was going to go, though, so keep unpacking this.
Yeah, I think at times like he gets a little bit of tunnel vision. I'm not quite sure how advanced his reads are. When he can keep it simple, he picks up low-hanging fruit very well, makes the simple feeds out of his live dribble. But I was hoping for a little bit more advanced playmaking. And he's done better lately with getting downhill and drawing free throws more often, but he's still not the most like dynamic, otherworldly inside the arc player. But when that would be the reason for me having him at 2 rather than 1. I still think this is 100% a franchise altering player. Anyone who has a semblance of what he has as a playmaker at his age, when you throw in the shot, the defensive tools, the athleticism, again, another one of those guys who's like built for the NBA pace, just gets up and down the floor really fast, rebounds a little bit. What else could you want in a modern wing than a guy who can dribble, pass, shoot, defend, and think the game at a high level with good athletic tools? Like I don't want anybody to get too cute with the Darryn Peterson conversation because he's still having a really special season. There's just a lot of freshmen having a special season. I don't know. I think he's been taken for granted a little bit.
Darryn Peterson, 95th percentile overall per synergy in terms of total offense. He still has yet to turn the ball over in a pick and roll possession, including passes, which is pretty awesome.
Very special.
47%
too, yeah.
47% on catch and shoot threes. He is only 25% on 3-point shots off the dribble. That's a number that I'm still continuing to monitor, but he hasn't necessarily been asked to take a lot of those shots. And then he's 68% at the rim. You mentioned the passing stuff, Maxwell. That is where I was going to go. And what I would say with that is when he's come back from injury more recently, so like the last few Big 12 games he's been able to play in, I saw some people talking about this on social media. He will occasionally miss like the next level skip that you might want him to make from the top of the floor where he could really bend the offense in a more significant way. But when he's actually attacked downhill, be it from the top of the floor, be it from along the baseline when he's attacking a corner closeout, he's actually made some pretty impressive reads off the dribble lately, you know, making those next passes and getting the ball to where it needs to go, to where I'm going, okay, we haven't necessarily seen a lot of this from Darryn. He hasn't been asked to do this. He's primarily been asked to take a shot every single time he touches the ball, but we're starting to see more of that passing come to light. So I would encourage people not necessarily to just go off the numbers in relation to his passing, but would really encourage people to try and dive into some of the tape, even on some of the plays where he's not necessarily getting credit for the assist because a shot wasn't made. He is starting to see the floor a lot better from that regard. And if that's going to become a more lethal part of his game to where he's able to run more pick and roll, more second side action, it's not just him scoring, it's also him making that next read. As he starts to unpack more of that within the flow of the offense for Kansas, it not only makes them a much more complete and dynamic team to actually go win a national championship, which if you watch Kansas the last 2 or 3 games in the Big 12, this looks like all of a sudden a completely different team, not just defensively, but also offensively. But it's going to really help Darryn in his evolution as an NBA player once he gets to the league, because those are the things he's going to be asked to do, because you're not taking Darryn at number 1, number 2, or number 3 and not putting the ball in his hands from day one. Those are the things he's going to be asked to do, asked to read, and there's going to be some ups and downs, some growing pains, but I'm already seeing some signs that he's starting to do it. And if you're getting that on top of everything Maxwell just unpacked with him from a shot making and a defensive standpoint, I mean, what are we talking about? This guy, you could have him number 1, number 2, number 3. He is an absolutely dynamic prospect, part of, again, a historic top to this class. But when we return to the Locked On NBA Draft and No Ceilings podcast, Maxwell and I are going to make our selections for the Wizards and the Atlanta Hawks. Stay tuned. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing's perfect, right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast, part of the #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On, your team every day. All right, Maxwell, we're up. Picks number 3 and 4. To quickly recap, Cam Boozer went #1 overall to the Indiana Pacers, and then number 2 to the Sacramento Kings was Darryn Peterson out of Kansas. So the Washington Wizards are up here at number 3 overall. I'm on the clock. I'm going with AJ Dybantsa out of BYU. This is a no-brainer pick to me. 22.5 points per game, almost 7 rebounds, almost 4 assists, 55% from the field, 30 from 3, 76 from the free throw line, a 21.7 assist rate, 31.1% usage. So another one of these star freshmen who are getting quite literally every single thing thrown at them. And he's been highly effective across the season. We've seen him lead second half comebacks. We've seen him take over as a primary engine at the middle of the floor. We've seen him make plays for others. We've seen him score out of the mid-range. We've seen him operate as a catch-and-shoot three-point guy. Even though the shot looks and operates a little bit flat, he's still made a decent number of those looks. There is one thing, though, in particular with Dybantsa. Again, he projects incredibly well as a do-it-all jumbo wing creator at the next level. But I'm monitoring very carefully. He's seen a dip in a few key areas during conference play here in the Big 12. His true shooting mark in those games has actually dropped to just below 54% true shooting. And the turnover rates really come up with a 17 turnover rate. So I think a lot of those two key things in particular really reared their ugly heads this past weekend in a game against Texas Tech. Watched that game, broke it down on film. He made a lot of poor decisions in that game on both sides of the ball. And when we were talking with some of our No Ceilings colleagues, I think Stephen Gillespie said it best when he said he felt like for all of the steps forward that AJ was taking in non-conference play leading up to this current stretch that we're in, he took a few minor steps back in terms of how he's played, not just in that game in particular, but really in the last few games that he's played in for BYU. I do question, again, what separates those other two guys from AJ for me, Maxwell, and be welcome to unpack this for yourself. I do feel like he's behind the 8 ball a little bit from a decision-making standpoint in terms of I'm seeing everything in not just in real time, but I'm 1-2 steps ahead of that defender. And I have the ability to hit any type of shot that I need to in my repertoire to counter what the defense is throwing at me. I don't have the blinders on. I have complete view of my teammates, and I know where that ball needs to go next. And then defensively, I mean, you've talked about it at length with some of the other pods we've done, some of the defensive lapses that he can have. I'm just not seeing him operate as quickly as he needs to be that quote-unquote do-it-all guy at this next level. But the overall talent package is still too much to pass on at number 2. Like there is no other player I'm considering before AJ.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he's good at like learning things as the game goes on. It's the reason he's had so many great second half performances throughout the year. Is it feels like he does do a very good job of figuring out what teams' rotations are, where the help is going to come from, where those doubles are going to be sent from as the game goes on. He can pick up on that. And he makes better passes in the second half. He's better at not going into doubles in the second half of games because of that tendency. But like you said, it's a little retroactive. Like a lot of the best processors in the world are guys who are figuring this stuff out before it happens and not having to see it and then adjust to it. And I do think that's the key difference that has him at 3 here.
100%. So AJ Dybantsa at number 3 to the Washington Wizards would completely fit in with what they're trying to build. Just from a defensive, I want as many long-limbed bodies on the floor who are, top shelf athletes as possible. He fits that mold. They want to play an up and down style, really fits their transition game. And then he can be one of these secondary creators to take pressure off of non-traditional point guards like a Trey Johnson. He can get someone like Alex Sarr the ball. He can play and pick and roll with them a little bit. And then he can be one of those middle of the floor scorers while someone like Sarr, Keyshawn George, a lot of their other wing and forward talent is spreading the floor for him to be able to operate. So Wizards fans should still be very excited if AJ Dybantsa is their pick at number 3. Maxwell, you're on the clock. The Atlanta Hawks via the Pelicans at number 4. I have a sneaky suspicion I know where you're going, But why don't you go ahead and make the pick at number 4?
All right, it's time to get a little spicy here in buck consensus a little bit. So I have 2 guys in my tier at 4 and 5. Picks 1 through 3. Those guys are all in tier 1. They're all off the board, right? I'm a big believer in you draft best player available, and I'm not a huge believer in like you have to draft for fit. But I think there are times where you ask yourself, which player can I maximize most that I feel good about in this tier? And if I'm the Atlanta Hawks picking at number 4 here, the guy I feel best about is Houston's Kingston Flemings.
Let's go.
6'4" freshman guard who emerged out of nowhere this season to become one of the standout players in all of college basketball on one of the country's best teams. He's averaging 15.4 points per game on 51.6, 38.5, 79.6 splits. With Kingston Flemings, the name of the game is rim pressure and getting wherever he wants on the floor. He's making 41.1% of his half-court shots come to the basket, which is elite for a guard. He is making 67.9% of his half-court rim attempts. That's like a power forward number. That's a center number, not a number that you get from a point guard who is often self-creating these looks. He is so fast. He is so shifty. And one of the big knocks I hear on Kingston Flemings is that he has a low free throw rate. I understand that. I wish he drew more fouls. You know, it's something star players tend to do, is draw a lot of fouls. I think it's just because he's so good at making guys miss when he goes downhill that he's just getting himself clean looks at the basket all the time.
It's not even just the basket stuff too, though. He's so excellent at pumping the brakes and getting someone to stop at that free throw line area and just nailing that mid-range shot right in their face too.
Yep, and 41.8% on pull-up twos. I wish that number was a little bit higher. But again, that's one of those like traits that guys that take a lot of those mid-range pull-ups, it tends to be a really good star indicator. A guy like Donovan Mitchell was an example of that at the college level, took a lot of pull-up twos, a lot of pull-up threes, ended up becoming this great shooter that we see at the next level. Ranks really well in pick-and-roll possessions, including passes, despite being one of the most common players in that play type. He ranks, I believe, let me get the exact number here, 92nd percentile in pick and roll frequency and 84th percentile in pick and roll efficiency, including passes. So excellent playmaker, but also someone who's great as a spot up player, really good at attacking from the second side. The floor has made over 41% of his threes in a spot up situation. And defensively, all of these traits that make him such a great playmaker on offense, where he has a 34.3 assist rate and only an 11.8 turnover rate. It all shows up on defense. He's great at processing the game. He knows what the other team is trying to accomplish. He knows how to get into the right spots and disrupt that. I think Kingston Flemings is like an excellent two-way point guard. I think he's a guy who can put a lot on his shoulders and create offense by getting to spots, picking apart defenses, and getting his own looks. And I think he's an awesome second side guy because he's so fast and shifty downhill, but he's also a reliable shooter off the catch. And then defensively, he's doing everything he can to answer any questions that might come up about his size. Again, 6'4", not the biggest guy in the world. It'll be interesting to see where he measures, and I do think that will affect his stock to a degree, more so than most guys in this tier. But I'm really into Kingston Flemings. I think he's been still sort of understated, and the numbers have plateaued a little bit offensively, but I'm still a huge believer in what he brings to the table.
Still, though, when similar to what I talked about with Boozer, just really quickly, I won't read off all the numbers, but same thing in top 50 competition in those games that Houston's played, which Houston's played a loaded schedule. He's not only outperformed his production in several areas across the board, but he's also taken on a higher usage role in those games. So he's being asked to do more against better opponents, and he's raising his level of play considerably in those games. That's a leader. That's who you want at the top of the floor with the ball in his hands. That's someone who should be considered very seriously to be taken inside the top 4, top 5, top 6 of this 2026 NBA draft class. So when we return to the Locked On NBA Draft and No Suns podcast, Maxwell and I will wrap up. We're doing picks 5 and 6 for the Brooklyn Nets and the Utah Jazz. Stay tuned. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. And that is where Gametime comes in. The Gametime app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Gametime app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident. Prices include fees up front, so the total is clear from the start. Features like zone deals help unlock great seats at even better value, whether it's an NBA game or another live event. Everything is right there in one place. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today and get in on the action. Thank you for making the Locked On NBA Draft podcast with no ceilings your first listen of the day. All right, Maxwell, I'm up. Pick number 5 for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm going Caleb Wilson out of North Carolina. This is an easy pick for me right now here at pick number 5. He's averaging 19.7 points per game, 10.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 57% from the field, only 23.5 from three. We'll get into that a little bit, 70% from the line, an 18.5 rebounding rate, 18.1 assist rate, a 3 steal rate, a 4.6 block rate. High usage player as well, 28.4 usage rate, only 11.5% turnover rate with a 13.4 BPM. What those numbers are telling me is that this is a guy who is viewed more as a play finisher, and rightfully so. That's the role he's going to translate into right away out of the gate in the NBA. But he's taken on a lot more burden than meets the common eye for this North Carolina team in particular on both ends of the floor. And in a lot of different ways, he's excelled at that. Now, are there questions to be asked about him on both ends of the floor? Absolutely. On offense, it's the lack of a quote-unquote jump shot for him right now. On defense, our guy Sam Vecini over at the Game Theory podcast has done some great threads recently on X about some of the defensive lapses that we've seen from Caleb Wilson and this North Carolina team in particular. They seem a little disjointed on that defensive end. I'll be curious to see and go back when I'm watching the tape over his last few games in particular, some of those things that I'm seeing and some of the notes that I'll be able to take on Caleb. But in the games that I've watched Caleb, his motor, his athleticism, they consistently pop off of my screen. He's able to finish plays over guys. He can create his own offense a little bit better than people think off the dribble when he's catching and quickly ripping and going in the half court. And if that 3-point shot does come around for him in time, I do think he's going to be better than a 24% mark in the NBA as he progresses through his career. We're talking about one of the more complete play finishers at his size, 6'10", 6'11", with length, with his athleticism, with his motor that you're going to find. And you just don't pass on those guys when you can find them in the NBA draft. He's an easy pick for me. Questions aside, I really like what he could be with the Nets and really with any NBA team moving forward.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Again, this was a guy I had to think long and hard about. In Atlanta's current context, I felt a little bit better about being able to maximize a guy in that Flemings vein. But I think with Caleb Wilson too, it seems like the Nets have really gravitated towards skilled players recently. Like you used to look at the guys they took in the last draft. A lot of them are guys that are really comfortable with the ball in their hands. And Caleb Wilson fits that. He just has an athleticism and an edge to him that those guys don't really have. I think it's a really interesting fit short term. It seems like he fits the vision of what they're building to. I think you're thrilled to get Caleb Wilson at 5 in this context.
So Maxwell Baumbach wants to shake things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Pick number 6 and throw a different name into the conversation. Who are we going with at number 6?
We're getting real spicy with it again. And this is a pick that I would not take if I didn't believe in this to a degree. I have this player in this tier. For the Utah Jazz, we're taking Keaton Wagler for Illinois at number 6. Let's go, baby. This isn't a homer thing. I'm from the state of Illinois. I got no allegiances to that university. So Keaton Wagler, let me make the pitch real quick. Wagler was one of those guys who was not highly touted. It didn't play a ton of high-level basketball prior to this season. Played at, quote-unquote, like normal high school. He wasn't one of these big prep academies. Had a lot of buzz over the summer. Season starts, I'm like, this guy's fine. He has found his groove. Since December, in 10 games, he has scored 18.2 points per game on 47.8, 46.2, 85.7 splits. That is absurd. And that came as they started to play bigger teams. They've only played one non-high major opponent in that time frame. So it's not like he's lighting up a bunch of bumps. Keaton Wagler is that dude as a scorer. He is so shifty. He's got an unbelievable stop and go game. He's got incredible touch from long range, which is why he's shooting over 40% from 3. But his ability to play that herky-jerky stop-start game
Yep.
and see the floor is unbelievable. So he gets to the rim a good amount. He's a good finisher inside. He's got to fill out his frame a little bit. I want to see him get bigger. But again, 85th percentile in pick and roll pass frequency and 93rd percentile in pick and roll possessions, including passes in efficiency. For a guy who is 6'6", a dribble, pass, shoot wing, to be commanding this high level of playmaking volume at such a young age with such little high-level basketball experience and just be tearing everybody up for one of the best teams in the country, you've got to be out of your mind to not be thinking about this guy as a lottery tier prospect at this point in time. Good rebounder too, gets after it on the glass. But again, dribble, pass, shoot wings are what everybody wants. That's Keaton Wagler. The concerns, he's really thin, and the defense leaves a lot to be desired. 1.5 steal rate, 0.9 block rate. It's not good. And a lot of it is like habit stuff too. Like there's obviously the frame, but he gets caught ball watching. He falls victim to doing those jump stop closeouts that get him burned. Ground coverage efforts, second efforts, that stuff has to get better. But I think the offensive skill set here is absolutely outrageous and one that can work in so many different contexts.
So I agree with you about all the defensive concerns. I'm in the same boat. But if we just put the offense on a pedestal as it should be for a guy of his age, with his size, his skill package, he projects as a really fun player to not just handle some secondary reps. He has a future potentially as a team's point guard down the line. And I think the reason for that is he's not a spectacular athlete in the sense of blow by speed, but his footwork, Maxwell, like you were talking about, is unbelievable for a player his age. I have not seen a player show off that kind of, not just like start, stop, herky jerky, but like when a defender clearly shuts him off from going one way, he is able to spin back around, pirouette the other way, and get to where he needs to go and either score the ball at the rim, pull up, find someone else. Like his footwork in those situations where defenders clearly trap him or send him one direction, he's able to go back that other way. That stuff is so... I don't remember watching a player who's been, quote unquote, out of the RSCI picture and like the high school rankings, like come in as a freshman and show me something like that. Like guys will come in, pop on the radar because they'll be having outlier shooter seasons, or they were way better defenders than we were expecting them to be. But in terms of those little advanced types of things with their ball in their hands, I don't remember seeing a player blow me away in that sense who hasn't been like a top 25, top 50, top 75 RSCI rank guy coming out of high school. So he's really impressed me, but that's the area of his game to where you mentioned a lot of the pick and roll stuff. I think he can take on an even greater burden than what he's already showing in Illinois. And you see him through Big Ten play as the season has progressed. He just keeps taking on more and more and more. He's taking the ball out of Kylan Boswell's hands. He's really running this team at an incredibly high level. And to your point, Maxwell, I don't see any outcomes in which he's not a lottery pick in this draft. At this point, I think we were already trending that way a few weeks ago, but given how he continues to just get better and better and better, this is a guy who teams need to have on their radars in lottery range. And to see Maxwell take a jump at him on this pick 6 for the Utah Jazz, I don't think it's crazy at all. I think these are the types of guys you want to find in the NBA draft, and you might have some questions about him in certain areas, but when he starts producing at the NBA level, showing all of these dribble, pass, shoot qualities, he's one of those guys who you're going to look back on if you didn't have him ranked high enough and go, dang, I really wish I would have bought into this a little bit more. Those are where teams can tend to miss, is when some of the athletic stuff, some of the defensive stuff, those negatives hold them from seeing how much truly positive can come from his overall offensive play. So Maxwell, I love your pick. I love where we ended up with this mock, these first 6 picks. That's going to do it for us on today's episode of the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast. Make sure to subscribe. Follow us at No Ceilings NBA on social media. Make sure you're locked in for all of our content and latest episodes. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.